Thank you. Now, welcome everybody to our GAPLA online talk. Now, there's a couple of people that may not know GAPLA. So for those of you, just by way of quick introduction, we are a non-for-profit association of lawyers in different countries, including Germany, Austria, Australia, New Zealand, but I'm sure I have not mentioned all the countries. So apologies if I've missed out anyone who's on the call today. And so we offer a platform for our members and colleagues to exchange ideas and experiences with around the world, really. Now you should be able to see Juliane Werther and myself on video. We are board members of GAPLA, and we may have other board members joining shortly. So if you see anyone else pop up by video, that'll be part of our board. Now, today's topic is Australia's Global Talent Program, which is a program that allows highly talented individuals to permanently migrate to Australia. And our speaker today is Jessie Kelly. And you can see Jessie as well on video, waving there. Thanks, Jessie, and welcome. Jessie works at the Department of Home Affairs, Australian Embassy in Berlin. Even though I'm not entirely sure if you're in Berlin at the moment, but you can tell us about that in a few moments. And you can also see on camera Alexander Nadiraschwili. I've practiced your name all day. I hope I got it right, more or less. Alexander is a migration and tax lawyer and partner in Berlin at Geismar and Partner. And Alexander will be very happy to answer any migration questions from a German perspective. And at this point, I should say that neither Jessie nor Alexander will be able to provide any advice during our discussion today. So I ask everyone to please just ask questions of a general nature today. And if you do have any questions, Juliane is in charge of everybody's mute buttons. So if you do have questions, please raise your hand. Is that how it works, Juliane? You raise your hand.
Yeah, there should be a button where you can raise your hand.
Yeah, okay. So you raise your hand by pressing a button. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I'm sure everybody else knows much more about it than I do. Okay, well, to start with, Australia's Global Talent Program is quite similar but very different to the so-called skilled migration, which is another avenue to migrate to Australia, as I understand it. And we might kick off by letting Juliane very briefly tell us what the skilled migration skilled migration visa is. As I understand, you've successfully applied for that in the past.
I did indeed. So I can share a couple of sentences here on what it is, and the background to why we thought this would be a good starting point is that not all of you attending today are migration lawyers. So for the ones who have a bit more general understanding. So what you're usually looking for when migrating to Australia is obtaining a permanent residency, which allows you to stay and work permanently in Australia. What Australia has done so far is a very sophisticated scheme, the skilled migration scheme, where they have a list of jobs for which they offer this pathway. So once you qualify for one of the jobs, which often means, and especially with lawyers, you do have to get another assessment of your qualifications done in a foreign country. Afterwards, you can continue to be checked on other requirements, for example, age, language, the degree of your education, the level of your English, and of course also your work experience. And that's quite a difficult path for some. And that's why I believe the Australian government has introduced the Global Talent Program. But without further ado, I would like to hand over to Jessie Kelly with the question, why was the program set up?
Thanks very much, Juliane, and look, thanks everyone. It's great to be here today. So yeah, thanks, great introduction. Why was the program set up? Well, yeah, you're exactly right. It's set up in part as a response to the very structured way that the skilled migration pathway is. So it is a complement to the skilled migration pathway, it doesn't replace that in any way, and it's also intended to serve quite a different function. So the main differences are that this program has really got a lot more flexibility to flex up and down around individuals, and to build a case, an assessment and a case around supporting particular individuals. And it's in response to this recognition that talent across the world is in high demand, and particularly talent in the kind of science and technology focused fields that are really going to make a difference in the coming years, coming 20, 30, 40 years, and the challenges that we see coming up over the horizon. So this program is seeking individuals, exceptional individuals with those types of skills, and as such has the ability to be really flexible around them. So the skilled migration program is still working, and it's a well-trodden and highly successful pathway for people. And there's a lot of, it's very clear now what's required for the skilled migration pathway. So this doesn't replace the list of professions that we accept under skilled migration or change any of that. So for a lot of people, that pathway is still the most relevant. But this new pathway has been created and may be relevant for some people who, despite being exceptional, actually don't fit into the very structured format of the skilled migration. So I'm going to do my best today to sort of broadly overview the program, the background, and the reason for it. And then we can talk a bit more about what's going on in Australia. I'll throw back to Juliane, and we can talk about the types of individuals who come through this program. So, perfect. Okay, great.
So how does it work?
How does it work? Yeah, so it's a two-step process. So it works through a first stage is free and very quick to do, and it's an online expression of interest. That is easily accessible on the Department of Home Affairs website. You can simply Google expression of interest, global talent program, or contact form, Australia's global talent program, and it'll pop up. And it actually requires you to move past that first phase before you can apply for a visa. So the visa is a totally separate application, and what you're seeking with this, the first step to get to apply for the visa is what we call a BCC, which is a unique customer identifier number. And with that customer identifier number, you're then able to apply for the visa. Juliane, would you like me to go a little bit into what the EOI sort of asks and what I would recommend you kind of put into the EOI?
Definitely.
Okay. Look, I might just step it back sort of one level first to give a bit more of an understanding of where we're going with the program, who we're looking to receive EOIs from. So the usual kind of spiel that I give around this program is that, you know, there are things like Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, climate change, and global pandemics. That are really big challenges that are coming over the horizon, and they're bigger than any one group or organisation. And Australia, in recognition of these types of challenges, Australia knows that we don't have all the answers in-house. And so we're seeking to augment our national capacity with our national capacity and our homegrown skills with international talent. And that's why this program was set up. So it's part of a sort of pathway of a range of different trade and investment and visa options that are seeking to help build the future of Australia. So the Global Talent Program was launched in November 2019. So we've been in operation for a while now. They had one key goal, which was to help build prosperity by attracting highly skilled people to Australia to participate in the world's highest growth industries. So it is our fast track program through to permanent residency. So the visa that we use, it allows immediate permanent residency. It allows you to stay in Australia permanently, work and study anywhere in Australia. You basically sort of are an Australian from the time that you step onto Australian soil. So healthcare, all of the other benefits that you'd expect. And there is a couple of other things about this pathway that are unique. There's actually no age limit to applications. Usually Australia has quite strict requirements around 55 years and over and under 18. We don't have any age restrictions, although we will ask some further questions if you sit outside those bounds. And there's also no set suite of qualifications. So that's what we were talking about before in opposition to the skilled migration pathway. There's no set suite of qualifications, but we are looking for people in 7 particular target sectors. So if people aren't aware already, these are agricultural technologies, space and advanced manufacturing, fintech, energy and mining technology, medical technologies, cybersecurity, and then the last one is a sort of chunky category, which we've labelled as quantum information, advanced digital, data science, and ICT. So as you can see, some of those sort of interrelate. And we're also looking for people, ecosystem builders, who sit in those ecosystems. Maybe they're not technical experts in agricultural technology, but they have a role in supporting the growth of that industry. And so that's where it may become relevant for lawyers or people who are not necessarily technical experts in one of those 7 target sectors. So the first thing to know is that we're looking to receive EOIs from people in those target sectors. I've got 2 more things to say really quickly about the EOIs, and then I'll hand back. But yeah, the important things that you need to be able to articulate via your EOI, so the contact form will ask you these questions, is you need to show very clearly how you're aligned to one of the target sectors and ideally have third-party evidence of that alignment. You need to have the ability to meet the Fair Work High Income threshold. So that's Australia's, this is sort of proxy of the type of individuals that we'd be hoping would apply for the program. And that is 153,600 Australian dollars as of 1st of July this year. You need to prove you're internationally recognised and prove your record of achievement. You need to have a formal reference from an Australian organisation or individual, and an Australian peak body would be the first class type of nominator there. And then you'll also be required, if you were going to apply for the visa, to meet all the normal health and character requirements. So it is, depending on what you have on hand, who you are as an individual, it can be really easy. We're looking for your CV, a copy of your passport, your letters of recommendation, evidence of your skill set, so whether that's projects that you've undertaken, industry bodies, other things like that. But yeah, I'm happy to sort of dig into that a bit more if needed.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And I believe what we, of course, from a European perspective would find interesting, is there any target sector that worked particularly well in Europe?
Yeah, of course. I mean, Europe, we are a team spread across the world, and we're trying to, in a very collaborative sense, build relationships, because, you know, we all win when we all win. So, I mean, there are a lot of instances where individuals are wanting to go to Australia anyway for a particular reason, probably to work on a particular project with an Australian organisation or industry body. And we simply provide the pathway for that. We also see this as an exercise in international exchange. So we're particularly interested in learning from Europe about medtech, financial technologies, quantum information and data, and to a lesser extent, agricultural technologies. So for example, here in Germany, I am at the Australian Embassy in Berlin today. And one of the very first things that we did was we looked at the agricultural technology sector in Germany as part of the International Grüne Woche, and held an ag tech breakfast where we took that collaborative approach of getting people in the room together. So we got ecosystem builders, people like lawyers who support and help that everything to run smoothly. We also got industry leaders, we got senior academics, and we got the best of local startups. So for example, a highly automated robotics farm just outside of Berlin. We invited the CEO of this robotics farm. And the interesting thing is that there's actually quite a lot that Australia and Germany can learn from each other and can exchange. So precision farming, Germans are excellent in precision farming, robotics, and that kind of technologies. Australia is actually also good. And so we already have established collaborations there. The other thing that's coming up that's quite interesting is Australia has a very delicate ecosystem. So we have a lot of deserts, we have a lot of soil that's not particularly rich or fertile. And so we have quite a lot to teach Germans about microfarming, for example. If you're wanting to make the most out of a very small plot of land that, you then don't want to intensively farm, or how do we make sure that that land remains able to produce optimally. There's a lot of exchange of that type going on. So it was a really interesting conversation.
Oh, wow. I would have thought it's differently, the other way around, because Australia is so huge and Germany is so small that we have actually figured it out how to work with a small plot of land.
Well, you definitely have. And in terms of, the small plot of land is relevant. I didn't articulate that particularly well. What I meant is the types of highly sensitive approaches that are used across big swathes of land in Australia can become relevant for micro farms in Germany.
Yeah, understand. And so once you got your BCC and applied, one question that reached us is, for how long will the program run, and is there any quota?
So there's no quotas. Last year we had 5,000 places available. That we weren't seeking to hit that number. We were seeing how many great applications came through, and we could grant up to 5,000. And we ended up last program year, so that is up to June, July, the Australian end of financial year, granting just above sort of 4,000 visas. And this year we're expecting to grant similar numbers or more. There's no cap on the program. The program's going to run through to at least mid-2021. And the interesting thing is, if you put in an expression of interest and receive a BCC, there's no expiry on that BCC. So you can use that to apply for a visa at a much later point down the road if that's relevant for you.
Okay, so even though the program expires one day, you can still use your BCC much later.
Exactly.
Oh, that's interesting. Very good. And did you have any interesting cases that you could share on an anonymous basis, of course, with us, of people that have applied and gone through the process?
Yeah, sure. So I have a couple of publicly shareable case studies, so I'll stick with those. And apologies if this comes across as a little bit wooden, because I'll just be reading the very, formalized words that we have that have been approved. But this should give you a sense of the types of people that we're approving through the program. And before I start that, I'd say there are kind of generally three types of people that I work with or that we're looking for through this program. So the three groups are very senior academics or thought leaders, so people who are very well respected in their field and internationally known for being able to lead on new discoveries in that field. The second is senior industry representatives, so CEO, COO level individuals, although depending on the target sector and the type of technical skill set, we also consider people who have led a business in another way. And the last is kind of startups and founders. So we're looking for exceptional startups in those 7 target sectors. The last thing that I would probably add to that, though, is, as I've said a couple of times, we do accept ecosystem builders as well. We're looking for people. We understand that it's not just scientists or it's not just CEOs who make up, how excellent work gets done in these areas. And so if you are someone who has a really strong skill set in one of those target sectors, then we encourage you to help to articulate to us and help us understand why you are someone who helps to unlock that sector. But yeah, I'll give a couple of examples and can give some more. So the first is Kai Hansen from Germany. And he actually sort of spreads across 3 of our target sectors, so fintech, medtech, and cybersecurity. He helps companies to set up business models with software as service. So he's worked with Uber and Grab, and he supports them in securing business partners and with their market to remain competitive in the market. And he's applied his skills across the medical industry with notable projects, including the founding of MedLanes, that is a doctor home visit booking platform. Lindera, patent AI software to reduce falls for seniors, and Her1, which is special nutrition for pregnant women and beauty food. The other is Mr. Dan Terhorst, who is in the quantum information, advanced digital data science sector. He's an entrepreneur and international commercial manager with a background in sales, marketing and business development in B2B and B2C markets in Europe and Asia. And he's the co-founder of DriveLa, a peer-to-peer car sharing platform that aims to reduce the cost of owning or renting a car. DriveLa is becoming Singapore's largest car sharing community, having received an exclusive exemption order from the Land and Transport Authority in light of their contribution to the smart mobility movement. He's going to shortly launch his business in Sydney and hopes to expand into Victoria and Queensland markets, contributing to Australia's urban mobility and smart cities agenda. I'll pick one more maybe from a different sector, and then if there's interest, we can look at another.
But it sounds as if there are a lot of, especially Berlin is famous for its startups and people with a lot of ideas. So it sounds that, especially people with great startup ideas, definitely have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. We do accept early stage founders, but of course, the more traction you have with your startup, the more likely it is that we're able to easily say yes. But yeah, for example, we also accept, highly technical scientists. So Dr. Solomon Miner from Kenya is in the ag tech sector. So he's a research scientist with Agricultural Research Victoria. So he applied for this visa onshore in Australia. He was already working in Australia. And he's working on a research project to strengthen Australia's grain gene bank and implement advanced agricultural research technologies to increase the efficiency of current biosecurity procedures to safeguard the movement of pulses, grains, germplasm into and out of Australia. He's authored and co-authored 43 research publications and has been involved in worldwide research collaborations. He had a PhD scholarship grant and later secured a postdoctoral scholarship in the USA. He'd previously worked as a research assistant at ILRI, which is part of the Consortium Nairobi and is a world-class research facility in Kenya.
Very impressive.
Different one. And one question also reached us that there is a global talent visa for recent PhD graduates. I mean, that kind of goes together with the last case study you just mentioned. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, sure. So we do accept exceptional PhD graduates, although we have received a lot of applications from PhD graduates. So the standard is very high to be able to be granted solely on the basis of PhD. But we accept PhDs who have finished their PhD in the last 3 years within one of our target sectors. And there is a waiver of that Fair Work High Income threshold. We wouldn't expect that someone just recently graduated from their PhD would necessarily be earning that Fair Work High Income threshold, but we'd be looking for them. We accept evidence of the ability to earn into the future. And in that case, it's really about strong alignment with the target sector. So having a key technical skill set that is that helps to unlock one of our 7 target sectors.
Oh, perfect. I'm just looking at other questions. Claudia, you just wanted to say something?
No, look, I'm conscious of the time and I can see there's a lot of questions coming in. Yeah. So unless there's anything, Jessie, that you would like to cover before we open the floor to others to ask questions, I think that might be the best way of going about.
I mean, people have a lot of questions about this program. There is actually now quite a bit of information on the internet. And because of the interest in the program, the team the team is spread across the world, but also at the moment, a lot of the team is pulled back to Australia. And our focus at the moment is still on promotion, getting the word out to the right people. But all of the answers, so we get a lot of questions about how it works, and I appreciate that it can be opaque at certain points, but the information is quite easily accessible through the Department of Home Affairs website, or it should be able easily enough to see yourself. And if not, I recommend that you just put in an expression of interest and, you know, make sure that your articulation of how you contribute to the target sector is strong, but put in an expression of interest.
And after you put in that expression of interest, you can have some further discussions with about the program. Is that right? So have you got an avenue to discuss the questions you may have during your application process? So
that's where I would say the like looking online, probably there's a lot of people now who've gone through this process, and there's actually a lot of helpful blogs and YouTube videos as well as the formal information. What you will hear is you will either be accepted with that EOI or you will not be accepted. If you're not accepted, you are able to reapply. And look, at that stage, maybe you might like to think about seeking to get some information. But as you mentioned at the start, we can't provide information, we can't provide advice on specific cases. It's not really what we're able to do because we are not migration lawyers.
And how long does it usually, sorry, Claudia, it's just I'm seeing also questions coming in like this, and I know we spoke about this earlier. How long does it usually take to get a result once you submit your EOI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I used to be able to answer this question more definitively. Since COVID, it's really a lot of things are more up in the air than they have been before. So I would hope that if you put in your expression of interest and you have a strong expression of interest, and then you move to the visa stage, that you would have the whole process complete within 6 months. However, that's just a general guess, because the boundaries are shifting every day. Basically, the answer to that question is, what is prioritised at the moment is COVID recovery and prioritisation of anything that helps with Australia's recovering from the coronavirus and continuing to manage that. So that might be, you know, directly on the coronavirus, or it might be something to do with economic recovery and creation of new jobs. And those are the applications and expressions of interest that are getting prioritised. I think that's probably understandable to everyone. So I just can't say with any level of confidence exactly how long you should wait. But my general rule of thumb is however long you think you should wait, double it, and then maybe double it again.
Okay.
It's not a short process.
It's just that it's a very different environment. It used to be a lot more fast tracked, and of course that was our intention. But you can't plan for a global pandemic much.
That's right. That perhaps also brings me to the next question that has reached us as well. Is that program open to people that are already in Australia, or do you have to be based outside Australia to apply? Yeah,
that's a great question. We use two different types of visa subclasses. So we use the Distinguished Talent Visa subclass 124 for any applicants who are outside of Australia at the time that they apply. And for those inside of Australia, we use the Distinguished Talent Visa subclass 858. So yes, if you are in Australia, you can apply, and you will apply with a different visa instrument.
Excellent. And you've briefly mentioned that there is no plan for a pandemic, but I understand from our discussion before this talk that regardless of COVID-19, you are processing visas at the moment, and you're getting people into the country.
Yeah, that's right. So I wish I could commit to more of a time frame, but it's just not possible. So look, thank you everyone for your patience with us. I encourage you to put in an EOI, and yeah, if you have an urgent COVID-related reason, flag that in your expression of interest. But we are processing, so we're working hard. The team is expanding in Australia to process these expressions of interest and visa applications. And because it's a permanent residency visa that we grant, once that visa is granted, there's actually no restriction on you being able to travel to Australia. Obviously, you need to quarantine the same as anyone would. But yeah, we're granting people and you're free to travel to Australia and start life there.
Excellent. I think, sorry, you go, Juliane.
I know we just hit our time frame, but because we're the German Australian Pacific Lawyers Association, I would of course also like to have our German migration lawyers say something about maybe a equivalent in Germany. So Alex, is there anything that is comparable to this program that we see in Germany?
Yes, unfortunately, there's nothing what you could really compare to this Australian Global Talent Program. So what we do have now in Berlin, especially just for Berlin, is a business immigration service to fast-track applicants with high qualifications. So university degrees or exceptional experience in their area.
And what would a skilled professional need to do earlier? So I understand we do have a skilled profession visa in Germany as well.
Yes, so that's the still called the blue card, and you just have to need to have a university degree, so either a bachelor's, master's degree, or diploma, and to meet the income threshold, which is a bit lower than in Australia. So it's now 5,400 euros per month. Or if there's a target sector, there's a list of professions, then the income threshold is lower. It's around 3,600 per month, I think. Yes, and you have to get your university degree assessed if it's not a German or European university.
Okay. So is that a European scheme? I understand that, right? The EU blue card, that's...
Yes, it's a European scheme. So they are quite similar in all the EU countries, but still every country has its own regulations.
Good to
and
understand.
If you don't have a university degree, there are some options if you can prove that you have the expertise and at least 5 years experience in your area.
And is that, Alexander, is that similar to the Australian skilled visa migration where you have sort of a list of professions that are being accepted, or is it industry-wide?
Yes, as I said, it's industry-wide, but there is a list of professions where the income threshold is lower. So it's for example, it's IT professions which are needed in Germany. There the income threshold is lower than the 5,400 per month. But otherwise, there's no limitation like the list in Australia for the skilled migration program, where we have a certain list of professions. In Germany, it's basically every profession if you have a university degree.
Oh, that's interesting. That's quite different than from the Australian system, I feel, because the Australian system is it's quite specific about what talent what talent is needed in the country.
Yes, and another thing is for the blue card program, you do not need to have German language skills. So there are some other visa programs where you have to prove that you at least have a certain level of German language, but for the blue card, you don't need any German.
That would be quite a high requirement, I'd say.
Quite difficult to meet. Yes.
Yeah, but what is important to mention is that all these programs, or especially the blue card, is not a permanent residence. So it's always temporary. And you can apply for the permanent residence the earliest after 2.5 years. But for the permanent residence, you definitely will need to have the German language.
Yeah. but hopefully you got that after 2.5 years. And I believe we're already a bit advanced, but I see one more interesting question for Jessie, because it's also related, I think, to COVID. Somebody asked about the Global Talent Task Force program. What is that, and what does it? Why was it set up?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. It is related to COVID. So actually, what is the Global Talent Program is now going to sit as sort of one of the tools of this Global Talent Business Attraction Task Force. So it is a brand new initiative set up out of Australia. It's a whole of government platform, and it's a whole of government push, actually, to build the future of Australia. And so it's primarily interested in supporting significant inward investment. So it's looking at very large organisations or the creation of a significant number of jobs. But it also looks at really exceptional individuals. And the idea is here that Australia will be proactive in how we support those individuals or businesses. So it's a team building in Australia. It'll then work through the distributed network of Australian government overseas. So both Australian Trade and Investment and Department of Home Affairs, who co-lead. But also our offices and embassies across the world. We will be basically set up to be able to connect you into a pathway of support. So at the moment, it's articulated at the high level, and if you think this is relevant for you, I'm more than happy to discuss what might be actually available or what might be actually suitable. But it's a coordinated and whole of nation suite of services that includes bespoke advice for established and startup businesses on how and where to locate in Australia, industry-specific contacts and support, and streamlined pathways to permanent residency. So the Global Talent Program will actually be one key piece in helping to deliver that task force. I also saw a quick question come through about, is it mandatory to get a BCC? If you want to apply under the Global Talent Program in particular, under those 7 target sectors, then the BCC is the mandatory first step. But you are also at any time welcome to apply for the Distinguished Talent Visa generally. It's in a kind of totally separate category, and I'd advise you take a look at that separately. But that doesn't require a BCC, but it's quite a different thing.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a lot of questions. I do believe that we have answered a lot of them. I see other ones where I think they are a bit too specific for this frame of talk. So I'm sorry, but we won't go into details on this. And moreover, we're at the end of our time frame. So if you have any questions that are left, feel free to send them forward to us. We will do our best to answer, but please keep in mind, we will not provide any legal advice. They will be general in type, and as Jessie said, there should be a lot of information available on the net as well. And if there's, of course, overwhelming interest, then we might invite Jessie back for one of our talks to go more into depth, maybe. So that definitely depends. Claudia, yes. Concluding words from you?
Yes, no, thank you. I'd like to thank Jessie and Alexander very much for your time and for all the information today. It's really interesting program in Australia, and also very interesting to see how the German system works. So thank you very much for your time and